Hello, good morning, and welcome to Daybreak right here on Trust TV. It is a lovely Monday morning, and of course, happy Easter wherever you are watching us at this morning. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And my name is Mardia Umar. Thank you for joining us this morning.
All right, well, it is a beautiful Monday morning. Mardia, most people are actually at home with the Easter holidays.
A lot of people say that Monday is the best or the perfect holiday season.
Exactly.
Or holiday.
Yeah, exactly. when you have that long Easter weekend, I mean, like, it's absolutely fantastic.
Exactly. But it's another time for people to reset because tomorrow activities will resume.
Exactly. Work commences, and of course we have to be at our very best. Well, right now let's take a look at the headlines on the hour. Police arrest another Kuje jail SKP in Nasarawa.
And on Easter, our families are hungry due to low passengers turnout, and that's coming from the commercial drivers.
And Kuka, may God guide Buhari in retirement as we reclaim our country.
Okay, let's go into the details now. The National State Command of the Nigerian Police Force said it has arrested 24-year-old Salisu Buhari, who escaped from Kuje prison during a jailbreak last year, and 27-year-old Zubairu Ali for the alleged theft of the motorcycle in Nasarawa local government area of Nasarawa State. In a statement signed by the command's public relations officer, DSP Rahman Nansel in Lafia, the state's capital, and obtained by Daily Trust on Sunday, the duo have been terrorizing and causing sleepless nights for the residents of the council and its environs. He said the two suspects were arrested by the police operatives attached to Nasarawa division in a sting operation.
Now, many commercial drivers in the Federal Capital Territory have decried the low patronage by passengers for the Easter holidays. The drivers said on Sunday in Abuja that this has resulted in little or no income to care for their family needs. According to reports, very few passengers were seen at the Jabi and Utako motor parks waiting to board vehicles at midday on Sunday. Mr. Yaku Jeremiah, a driver, said he had expected an influx of passengers due to the Easter holidays, but was disappointed by the number of people at the park.
And still in Easter celebration and associated matters, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka, has prayed to God to guide President Muhammadu Buhari in retirement. Buhari will end his second tenure on May 29, 2023. In his 2023 Easter message, Kuka told the president-elect, Bola Tinubu, that the most urgent task facing Nigeria is not infrastructure or the usual cheap talk about the dividends of democracy. His message was also passed to the Supreme Court of Nigeria, which Nigerians are watching with keen interest to decide issues arising from the 2023 general elections.
All right, now it's time for us to take a look at some news reports. And as the date of the 2023 National Population and Housing Census inches closer, the National Population Commission is ticking off important parameters that would ensure smooth conduct of the exercise. Buildings numbering and household listing will commence by April 17th before the actual census exercise kickstarts in May. Also, on the calendar is a 4-day refresher training for the special workforce that would oversee the exercise, which was held in Makudi, the Benue State capital. Our correspondent Jimmy Azande visited the training venue. Now reports.
After this training, the beneficiaries are supposed to transfer their knowledge to enumerators between April 25th to 30th, 2023. This is probably why the State Director of the National Census Commission, who spoke on phone, described the process as a train-the-trainer activity. Some of the trainees expressed optimism that they will be able to deliver optimally with what they have learned.
Training out of staff for the 2023 digital census, and the trainees here are the specialized workers. So actually they were trained, but there are some new things that came up, and we are trying to do a refresher training for them so that they get up with the new things that came up. So that is what is happening here. After this training, we are going to move to the local government where we'll be training the enumerators and supervisors.
The trainees also spoke on the process of the census and are commending the Commission for the opportunity to serve. They are also confident of their ability to step down the training to local enumerators in the designated places of primary assignment.
We are here to be trained and in the end go out there to give people the whole training that they need, and in the end for us to have a credible census, 2023 census. I really appreciate it, and it's very good because the last training that we had was quite different. The features were quite different from this very one. The refresher training has now boosted our knowledge about more things, more editions of the new, more things about the new editions. Quite ready to go out and to train these other people to go to the field and give us a credible census.
For the past 4 days, we have been training rigorously. We have been trained on the mobile device and management as well, which was not taught previously. So yesterday we went for our field work on training mode, and today also we have gone for the enumeration of persons, the training. So far, I can say that we are 99% ready for the May census.
The last population census conducted in Nigeria was in 2006. 17 years after, Nigeria prepares for the very important activity, and reality is beginning to set in that the exercise will be conducted as scheduled.
And now to Gombe State, where motorcycle operators have reacted to the federal government's plan to remove fuel subsidy by June 2023. And a cross-section of the motorcycle operators in Gombe Metropolis who spoke to Ibrahim Ismail said the policy would escalate the current fuel crisis in the country. Ibrahim Ismail has this one.
Despite it being the twilight of the Buhari administration, it is still pressing to implement policies that will impact on the incoming administration. There are already plans to distribute palliatives to poor and vulnerable Nigerians, and the federal government has secured $800 million grant from the World Bank to finance its implementation under the National Social Investment Program. But the motorbike operators in Gombe Metropolis, also known as Okada riders, are uncomfortable with the proposed policy. They believe the move will have a negative effect on their businesses and want government to reverse the policy in the interest of Nigerians. The subsidy removal will affect me negatively, considering the inflation rates in the country. I reject it. A commuter who is supposed to pay 100 naira will pay 50 naira instead. If you buy fuel worth 1,000 naira, you can only make 1,300 or 1,500 naira from it. You can feed your family and give balance for the motorcycle from the amount. They are planning to remove subsidy. Removing the fuel subsidy is plunging us to further hardship. It will take us backward. We are already in a difficult condition. The Okada riders are complaining about current hike in fuel prices, which they say makes it difficult for them to operate. The implication would be that total removal of subsidy would be detrimental to their survival. Removing fuel subsidy will worsen the situation. We are pleading with the government to halt the plan because we are benefiting from the subsidized oil price. The present administration may have federal government secured a grant from the World Bank to drive fund its distribution of palliatives to caution the negative effect of subsidy removal. But will the incoming administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu be willing to be bound by conditions of a grant that it did not take? More importantly, which government will distribute the palliatives and which administration will remove the fuel subsidy? Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
Meanwhile, residents of Maiduguri have heaved a sigh of relief over the circulation of cash in the metropolis. For months, the residents had experienced difficulty accessing cash as a result of the Naira redesign policy, but it seems the situation has turned round. In this report, Beatrice Kurutsi spoke to residents on the present state of access to cash. His report.
The introduction of the CBN's cashless policy in the last few months made it difficult for many residents in Maiduguri to access cash from banks and from point-of-service operators. The directive of the Apex Bank that old notes be reintroduced into circulation is cushioning effects of the hardship. For some residents, the situation has improved compared to previous weeks as they now have access to cash, even though they experience long queues at the banks and network problems when making transactions.
We have been experiencing cash challenges sometimes back, but compared to now, I think there is a little improvement. Improvement in the sense that there are cash in circulation, but the major challenges we are facing is the transaction charges from the maybe bank and other stuff like that.
Well, entering the bank alone has been a big challenge because sometimes you have work to do, you have other schedules, and then seeing the queue in the lines that is leading to the entrance of the bank is something you will spend the whole day.
Getting cash, people get cash, but as a student, you still have to go to the queue, go to the bank, be on the queue for so long, while I still have to attend my classes, my lectures, my practicals, so I still do not have that access to cash. My access to cash is still limited to just my transportation from school to my house.
However, some are adjusting to the new reality that the return of cash into circulation will not stop online transactions and use of ATM to pay for services.
Because most of the people has already been on that POS cashless. Even just transfer message. Most of the people they believe now in transfer more than cash. But even before there are people that they believe on this banking transaction instead of cash. So when this cashless come again, so people are going on it. So for my own business, that POS is more than the cash right now.
Pona Iswa, who runs a point of service business, says he gets cash but not easily compared to the period before the cashless policy took effect.
That we are getting the cash, but anytime that CBN release money to the bank, we used to get the cash because I am agent of First Bank and they are helping us sometimes 500,000, sometimes 300, sometimes 400 based on the money that come into the bank. But after they come and release the old notes, now the old notes is available more than the new notes. But why is it that the new notes, as they bring it, why is it that now they circulate? Only the old note that is circulating.
For many residents in Maiduguri, the acceptance of old Naira notes and circulation of cash will make life bearable. This is why they hope that the federal government does not revisit the monetary policy again and reintroduce the hardships they experienced. Bitrus Kuruti, Trust TV News, Maiduguri.
Now, Tashe is a play performance that is performed by youths, children, and in some communities, even the elderly, for taking this kind of entertainment to entertain people during the month of Ramadan, and it usually happens at night. So Tashe performers use drums and other traditional musical instruments, while others dramatize their messages to conform with the values of the communities they represent. Abdullah Yamadi witnessed youngsters performing Tashe in Kassana and Maradi in neighboring Niger Republic. Take a look.
From these young boys to these young girls dressed in attire that depicts Hausa culture and traditions, the message is the same, meaning Ramadan fast is at its peak and the momentum inches towards Salah festivities.
Malama ga kudin toshinki mun kada lefe na ku zuba mini bani barin sallah ta wuce ni. Malama me kike ta faɗi ne? So nake nayi tarin sallah dan bana kun ga ko ba a wuce ni.
The origin of this long cultural heritage could be traced to the beginning of the existence of Hausa people. Some of these performers depict the origins, values of Hausa culture mixed with fictions on one hand and modernity on the other, mostly done between the first 10 days to the 20th of Ramadan. attachment with the month of Ramadan tries to give Tashi a more religious correlation than culture in most Hausa communities. However, some historians from the Niger Republic look at Tashi from a cultural perspective other than the religious point of view, even as it is done only during the month of Ramadan. While in some communities, Tashi performers are given some grains, meals, and even drinks. In some towns and cities, they are given some token amount of money as gifts.
So I suggest that people of the custodians of Hausa traditional culture shouldn't allow the culture of Tashi to die, because Tashi is a part and parcel of Hausa culture, and the culture is an identity of a people. As such, the culture of Tashi, which all observers will tell you that is on the verge of extinction as a result of intrusion of certain foreign cultures. This culture must not be allowed to die.
Observers say Tashi performers depicts the spirit of Ramadan, which encourages sharing, sober reflection, perseverance, humility, and togetherness. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Kazana.
All right, well, that's it for the reports and, of course, headlines for this hour. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we take a look at the front pages of the newspapers this morning. You stay with us.
situation where you find that a look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Trust TV's Daybreak. Now it's time for us to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers to see what's making the news. And of course, we'll start with a Daily Trust newspaper. The major story on the front page reads, auto crashes claim 385 lives in 3 months. And Riders Head says Bauchi, Kebbi, Niger lead in casualty figures. 6,000 deaths recorded annually, and FRSC blames overspeeding, overloading others. Details of that story can be found on page 4. That is accompanied by the infographic that is there on the front page, showing the breakdown of these auto crashes. Easter clerics must stop desecrating pulpits with partisanship, hate speech. That is according to the Sultan, and details of that story can be found on page 5. Moving towards the bottom of the front page, encomiums as ex-World Court Judge Bola Ajibola is buried, and let's come together in unity, Can President tells citizens. Benue, gunmen killed 134 in 5 days, according to Autumn, and that story can be found on page 6. Moving towards the top of the front page, there the front page comment reads, we reject the $800 million World Bank loan for palliatives. And that should make interesting reading on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, and of course it continues on page 13. Now these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
And now let's move to the Nation newspaper. The lead story here says governors under pressure over security vote spending. There's a radio attached to this story. It says the third agency, NFIU, EFCC, seek movement of account to CBN for proper monitoring. That story started on the front page, but you continue from page 4 to get more details. And then let's take a look at the top here, where we have Osibajo, Obasanjo, others pay last respect at Ajibola's burial. Buhari, Tinubu governors, Ishola Mon ex-ICJ judge. It started on, okay, that story will be found on page 2 in the Nation's newspaper. Let's move to the next one at the top, which says APC ask tribunal to dismiss APP, APM petitions. Okay, those are political parties there. Page 4 has the story. And then attacked Owo Catholic Church reopens months after. Page 3 has that story. Let's take a look at the bottom strip. Banks, oil firms, others flout stock exchange governance rules. Okay, a good look at it. The story started here on the front page, and then page 4 has more details of the story. And the last one we'll take this morning from the front page of the Nation newspaper says election petitions, Kuka urges judiciary to do justice, and cleric ask incoming government to keep Nigerians alive. Okay, you can see a pictorial of Reverend Kuka there, and that there's a story starting there, but you continue reading on page 4. That's pretty much what we have in front of the Nation's newspaper this morning.
Next, we'll take a look at the Punch newspaper. The major story on the front page reads, fuel subsidy removal, marketers seek CBN loans for 30,000 gas stations. And it has riders here that says gas stations to cushion subsidy removal effect, as PMS may sell for 750 naira per litre. NATO wants end to subsidy, NLC to meet incoming government over removal date. And moving towards the bottom of the front page there, Bishop demands justice for 41 Owo attack victims as church reopens. Federal state lawmakers to get 49 billion naira. And bandits slash ransom for 85 Samfara abductees. Details of that story can be found on page 16. FG bars online banks from accessing customers' photos, contacts. You can find that on page 22. And moving towards the top of the front page, at the very top of the, above the mast head, asset declaration, defaulters may be removed from office. Find that story on page 8. Can governors, others preach love at Easter? And finally, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, Buhari Osibajo, MBA mourn ex-ICJ judge Ajibola. These are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
All right, let's take it from here. The Guardian also has a pictorial of a late Ajibola. It says a jurist for ages that you can find on the bottom strip, but that story continued on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And then how Agbero multiple dues spike transportation costs by 25% in Lagos. Page 4 accommodates that story. Then still on at the bottom strip, Kuka task Nigerians next government on nation building. All right, page 6 has that story. And then APC may zone Senate presidency to Southeast. Page 5 accommodate that story. The lead story this morning, the Guardian newspaper says UK revises foreign health workers recruitment, returns Nigeria to red list countries. The writers attached to the story. One says outrage over bill mandating 5-year pre-licensing practice for Nigerian trained doctors. Another one says bill poly research reels out inaccurate figures. Federal government brain drain committee, the report not implemented, group inactive for months. The last rider from Dr. Tomori says if a bill becomes law, government officials should also stop medical tourism. That story is on page 3 this morning in the Guardian newspaper. That's pretty much what's in front of the Guardian newspaper for today.
Next, we'll take a look at this day newspaper. The major story is tributes pour in as Bola Ajibola is 89 is buried in Abeokuta. And we have riders here that says Buhari, Obasanjo, IBB, Tinubu, Osinbajo, Atiku, Lawan, Abiodun, Sanwo-Olu, others mourn, pay last respect. I appointed him AGF against position of people who described him as controversial as ex-military leader, and reveals the deceased didn't receive salary throughout his service to fatherland. Still talking about this day newspaper, World Bank advocates debt restructuring for poor countries. That is a story that you can find on page 12. Moving towards the top of the front page there. At Easter, Nigerian leaders advocate love among people. Osinbajo, CJN, Khan, Obaseki, others urge reciprocity in Christ-like values. Faleke on rotation of governorship, its turn of Kogi West for fairness, justice. You can find that story on page 41. At the very top of the front page there, autumn, we will not be provoked into taking up arms against anyone. And riders here to support that story. Atiku condemns Benue Zamfara killings, urges FG to protect citizens, and police confirm escalation of banditry in Sokoto, informants sabotaging our efforts, according to military officials. And with 89 expected assets, Nigeria to top Africa's upcoming oil gas projects by 2027. That story can be found on page 6. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of this day newspaper this morning.
Now, let's take a look at the major stories in front of the Leadership newspaper this morning. Just at the very top, we have avoid cheap talk, a fix Nigeria, Kuka tells Tinubu. Page 6 has the story. Then 15 killed. Bonds beyond recognition in Enugu crash. That story is on page 21. And below that, we have Labour blames shoddy privatization for Abuja discos and orders a takeover. Started on the front page. Page 7 has more details. And just below that, we have Senate presidency. Akpabio may drop ambition for ministerial slots. Page 1 has the story. And then the lead story in the Leadership newspaper this morning says concerns over renewed terror attacks after 2023 polls. Riders attached to the story says security expert folds president's marching orders to service chiefs without results. And another one says they're already writing their handover notes. The last one says surviving IDPs desert camps in Benue. And that story is on page 4 in the Leadership newspaper. Just beside it, we have Osinbajo, governors can rejoice with Christians at Easter. Page 6 has the story. Then journalists, writers launch a book on Osinbajo on April 28. Page 6 also has that. And then PMB, IBB, Atiku, governors mourn ex-justice minister Bola Ajibola. Page 7 has the story. That's some of the major stories in front of the Leadership newspaper this morning.
And with that, we wrap up reading out the headlines from the front pages of the newspapers this morning. It's now time for us to take a deep dive and analyze some of these stories. And of course, right here in the studio, we have Mukhtar Suleiman, a public affairs analyst, to help us do that. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning.
Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Happy Easter, by the way.
Oh yeah. You know, people are so selfish these days. They use Ramadan as an excuse. They didn't give us rice.
Exactly.
I was wondering, like, Salah is coming.
Oh,
just putting it out there. Salah is coming.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah, just putting it out there. I don't mean anything. I'm not threatening anybody, but Salah is coming.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, we hope to see that in good health. So let's take a look at the newspapers this morning. The major story on the front page of the Daily Trust talks about auto crashes, claiming to 385 lives in just 3 months. It's quite alarming when you look at it, and the FRSC is blaming overspeeding and overloading, amongst other things. But
is this just in Abuja or Nigeria in its entirety?
Nigeria in its entirety.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised it's this low.
Okay.
I don't mean 385 lives don't matter, but I came in from Bauchi over the weekend.
Okay.
I had to come in by road because my flight was cancelled. So when we're coming in to the express here, we saw a car just by this Mabushi bridge, beside it rather, before it, just around that area. It was still on the road, but it was upside down.
Okay. And it was a lone vehicle?
It was just one vehicle.
Okay.
It was still on the road. It had already hit the curb already anyway, but it didn't fall off the road.
It just
flipped. But it was. I desperately want to know how that happened. You know, sometimes you're driving in Abuja and then you wonder how Abuja drivers drive. It's really, really funny. It's amazing how sometimes some of them drive as if they want to take off. Even a plane that wants to take off doesn't go at that speed. But it's really, really weird. How much of a hurry are you that you couldn't just do slow and steady to get?
So can we say overspeeding is the main cause of these crimes?
One of it, overspeeding. One of it is overspeeding. Secondly, I could say poor maintenance of our roads.
Exactly.
But funny, ironically, because of how poor our roads are, we don't have as much accidents as countries in Europe or even in the United States.
As good as the roads are.
Because the road is so good, you have to run.
Exactly.
Ours is so bad, you have to slow down. So at some point,
are we saying it's a good thing now that the roads are so bad?
Well, pros and cons. It depends on how you look at it.
When we want to take advantage of some of the roads that are smooth, we go overboard and then we have lots of numbers. I'm surprised that we're having this low numbers, according to statistics from the FRSC. But now, taking a look at this holistically now, what do you think is responsible for this? Is it that the FRC is not doing enough? Because I know they don't work at night and most of this accident happen at night. What do you think is the problem?
I think it's individual responsibility at the end of the day. Everybody has to know that they have families to get back home to, people who depend on them, people who love them, people who want to see them again. So you have to drive it hard carefully when you're moving. So it's a personal responsibility at the end of the day. And I think also that it has something to do also with how we issue out license in this country. Most people don't even go through driving school. I'll give you an example. When I went to get my license recently, and because I don't drive usually until this year, started driving again properly this year, so it's been years. So when I went to get the license, I'd already done driving school, which was mandatory, got the certificate. What's his name? The person who was supposed to do the driving school test for me. You know, apparently there's a way you beat the system, and then the person takes it for you. And I wasn't comfortable with that. The person said I should give him a certain amount of money. I told him I'm not doing that. I'm sorry, I've already paid for license, and giving you money is not something I'm going to do. So he said, in that case, you do the test by yourself. I said, no problem, bring up the test. I did the test, I got 87% the first time. Now, if you get below 60, you fail. So he was shocked. I saw him disable the network. I saw him do it because he didn't want that. Because I think he thought that was a fluke. So he didn't want that to submit. So he said, there's no network code. The network is slowing down. I have to do it again. And when you do it again, the questions change. So I went ahead and I did it again, and I got 83%. he was shocked. So he called the guy, person who sent me to him, and like, guy, that person really. So it's to show you that the kind of people that he has interacted with don't even know. And these questions are very basic. Basic questions like, if you're in a roundabout, who has the right of way? If you see the braking lines on what does the braking line on the road, or the straight line, what does it mean? And these are basic knowledge that you should have if you go to a proper driving school. So I think Nigeria needs to do more in terms of policing that system, just to ensure that more people get to understand road traffic laws more as before they begin to actually motor the roads.
All right, well, we hope that those things are actually looked into. Now, let's take a look at something else. I mean, last week we got the news that the federal government has put a lot of emphasis on fuel subsidy removal, and they also went ahead to get a facility from the World Bank of quite a sizable amount of money. The front page comment on the front page of Daily Trust says we reject that that amount of money as palliatives for Nigerian citizens, which we are meant to believe is going to be doled out. So do we have any choice in the matter?
First
whether we reject it or not?
Well, I think we do, because we are the people who are supposed to
but we weren't
benefit
consulted.
from this.
We were not consulted.
Well, the problem now is, I think the Nigerian government needs to learn that you cannot run the country like an NGO. You're not a humanitarian aid foundation. I think that's what the country needs to understand. My position on fuel subsidy has always been clear. I've always been for removing the fuel subsidy. But before I go into what my position is again, $800 million US. And I think the cable did a breakdown of what that would look like for 50 million Nigerians, they say. And that's about $16 per person.
Basic calculations there.
Basic calculations. And that's about 11,000 naira at black market rates and 7,000 naira at CBN rates. It doesn't make sense. Absolutely no sense. So my question to Nigerian government would be, in a country of over 200 million people, where over 60% of your population is living in multidimensional poverty, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics last year, how then did you decide that only 50 million people need palliatives? How did you come to that conclusion? When you did come to that conclusion, who are the 50 million Nigerians that you want to give? Because beyond the people who are living in multidimensional poverty, the other people that are not even in the multidimensional poverty index are underemployed. A large percentage of them are underemployed. So how do you decide who gets this palliative that you actually want to dole out?
And of course,
it doesn't make sense.
The amount itself. I mean, like you talked about, if it's the official rate is like $7 grand. Yeah, so we're looking at it on the front page of the Punch now. We're saying that fuel may be sold for as high as 750 naira per
I don't
liter,
even have a problem with that.
which is like when you talk about
10
that
liters.
the pallet, exactly, that's just like 10 liters.
So it doesn't make sense. So I don't even have a problem with if fuel goes as high as 1,000 naira. But my argument for it is, if you really, really want to do right by Nigerians, $800 million US is enough to fix some of the issues in the power sector. Ensure that there is stable power in at least 98% of the country. Ensure that there is effective and efficient inter and intra-city transport networks. This would help to curb the inflation that this fuel removal will otherwise create. Because if there's stable power, production will go up. If production goes up and we're not having to spend money on fuel to power generators, then inflation, price of goods will come down. More so, people should not have to pay premium price for PMS to generate primary source of power. You shouldn't have to buy 700 naira per liter just to get light in my house, to charge my phone. It doesn't make sense. It's unfair. So I think that's something that the Nigerian government needs to look into, as opposed to doling out money, because doling out money doesn't really help anybody at the end of the day. But then, even after, what's even the certainty that all 50 million is going to get on their money, because we know that the government has never lived up to its words.
And what criteria are we going to use?
Okay, so
how do you ascertain?
Is it going to be a raffle draw?
No,
simple random system.
The federal government, in their defense, are saying that they have a social register where these vulnerable people have been registered. And some pundits have said that, okay, a lot of people have said, let's invest this into capital projects where ordinary Nigerians, all Nigerians can enjoy at the end of the day. What happens if this money is being given to these people to execute this project, and then it ends up in some people's pockets?
What happens if it still ends up in some people's pockets? Either ways. Who is to say that it's going to actually get to the social register that you're actually mentioning? Who are the names on the social register? Can we see them? Can it be published? For in the NGO space, in the development space, if we do a project or a program, and then we give out maybe stipends, each person who collects a stipend signs their name. At the end of the day, they drop their phone number, their email, and then signs their name. That way, the auditor can call anybody at random, just to be sure that are they going to do that? Are they going to get 50 million people to sign their name on a sheet of paper, just to be sure that they actually give it out to 50 million? Accountability is a very key thing, and the Nigerian government have shown that it's lacking in that, in terms of integrity and accountability over the years. They've never really lived up to most of the things that they promise, the way they promise it. So I think this is something that really needs to be reviewed. It doesn't make sense. I spent a short time in the power sector, not very long, but I think $800 million will go a long way in settling at least 4 or 5 states to ensure stable power in those states. And that's the start of ensuring, of fixing what the problems are in the power sector. One of the major issues with the power sector is not even the availability of resource. It is the kickback funding that comes back. If we can eliminate kickback, or at least reduce it, let's be realistic, it's going to make there's going to be larger impact in the power sector. That's why I'm so happy with the new EPSRA, that's the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act that the President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law some weeks back. It's very good for this, because then it decentralizes power regulation from NEC and gives it back to the states. So it makes it a bit easier. So that way, if Delta State begins to have stable power and Edo is not, Delta State will say, Mr. Oga, look at our neighbor. What are you doing? So it makes more sense. We'll see those people that actually want to work and those that actually been. Political competition will become a proper thing in terms of governance, because the PDP states want to outdo the APC states so that maybe they will win next elections. So that way, we will know that competition will lead to the benefits of Nigerians as opposed to just the benefits of politicians.
But you agree with people who would argue that implementation of bills or assented bills never really work in Nigeria?
This is different because this has to do with, how do I put this? Each state becomes responsible, yeah? And each state has different parties that are leading. With states like Abia, where Labour Party is currently, and Labour Party is looking to break into the political market properly, you can tell that that person will do everything possible to leverage on what the policy says to ensure that there is stable power in their state. If there is stable power in Abia and there is none in Imo people will ask their government question. That's why I said it will lead to political competition that will lead to the benefit that will benefit Nigerians, as opposed to the political competition that only benefits politicians. So, which is something that I think is actually good for our polity, and governance will be improved. Well, I hope so anyway, because if there's one place you always see politicians unite is in selfish interest. So,
well, talking about the power sector, and of course, the things that are going wrong or going right in the power sector. A story here on the front page of the Leadership says Labour blames shoddy privatization for Abuja discourse, and of course others in the entire takeover of the electricity distribution sector. Are you one of those who actually believes that the whole process was bungled, so to speak?
I think so. I think so, but I don't appropriate as much blame to the discourse as much as I would to the Nigerian government itself, because production is still done by the government. The discourse distributes. These guys are trying to maximize profit as much as possible. So of course they're going to prioritize areas where they get more money from, and then because if there's not enough power to go around, then they will have to prioritize areas they get more money from, and then share some of the power among the other areas. So you see areas like Wuse to get a lot of power because why? There is increased market activities in those places, and because of increased market activities, prepaid meters means that they're going to buy more units. So these guys are profit making. So if the production can go up, because you cannot waste power. If there's power unused, it is a big problem. So if production can go up from the producing side can be better, the distribution side can then be improved a little. At least the distributors still have some excuse as to, oh, there is not enough production. But when there's enough production to ensure that distribution is evenly evenly goes round, then you have no excuse. Then people can actually come for your head properly.
Yeah, but at one point, the transmission was actually way up there. I mean, like it was up to 4, 5, even 7,000 megawatts.
We've never had a stable, say 5,000 megawatts in years. So again, it's still prioritizing the areas where you know that you're going to get more money from, or the areas where you think there are more people who are influential and could affect your business. Because again, like I said, these guys are profit-making driven. So this is where government regulation and government input becomes very pertinent to private sector businesses. So if government is not doing its own part, what moral high ground does it have to then hold private sector responsible?
It's really heartbreaking when you hear some of these government officials talk about it. Not forgetting the scorecard that just happened from the Ministry of Power. And when you listen to the minister talk, you think that these things are going to be implemented, and then we feel the impact as soon as possible. But we keep waiting years and years and years. It doesn't even happen.
Nigeria is not short of competence. Nigeria is just nonchalant. I said this like 1 million times.
But we have the manpower to make things happen.
We don't just have the manpower, we have the resource, enabling resource and everything to make anything happen. But we're just nonchalant. And we have been so bedridden by corruption, senseless corruption like I like to call it, that we no longer see things from national interest lens anymore. So that's something that needs to come back. There's corruption everywhere, but it should be sensible corruption. Something that actually leads to some level of improvement in standard of living, either for your people or for yourself at least, but within the confines of where you know you're supposed to influence some level of socio-economic activities. And that's something that Nigeria doesn't have. And I'm hoping that eventually, maybe the new set of politicians that are coming in can set a chain reaction that can actually improve the system even far much more better than what we have.
Speaking about chain reactions now, something worthy of talking or discussing this morning is the concerns of a renewed terror attack after the 2023 elections. Some people have attributed it or coined it as a resurgence of insecurity in Nigeria. And security experts, different views, opinions about all of this. What do you think is the cause of this resurgence of insecurity in Nigeria?
We've always known that political actors have deep-rooted hands in what is happening in terms of the insecurity in the country. It's an open secret, but who are the politicians, we don't know yet. It's sad and sickening because during the elections, we saw these guys took a break. Whether they went to vote as well, we don't know. But it took a break and it was reduced. But now they're coming back all over again. And it is really, really, again, it is sickening to say the least about what is really happening in this, in terms of insecurity in the country. And I've always said that if I could advise the president-elect, I'll tell him to do 2 things in his first tenure, even if he doesn't do anything else. If he can focus on 2 things, insecurity and stable power. You should forget about anything else for now. Don't get distracted. Every other thing can be secondary, but if you can focus on these 2 things, because they have chain reactions to every other thing. So if you do infrastructure development and I don't feel very safe to access it, it's going to be there and it's going to rot away. So, but if there's stable power in the country, socio-economic activities will actually increase. Production will go up. Inflation will come down, demand and supply, just basic economics would take effect for the benefit of the country. So I think if he doesn't do anything, if he can do these 2 things, I think he has done right by Nigeria for the first tenure, and then he can move on to other things for the second tenure.
All right, now let's take a look at things coming out from the health sector now. A lot of, for recent times, we've been talking about this brain drain, lots of doctors leaving the country, healthcare workers, nurses, and the rest of it. And now on the front page of The Guardian is a story that says the UK revises foreign health workers recruitment, returns Nigeria to red list countries. And of course, recently we've heard there's a bill mandating a 5-year pre-licensing practice for Nigerian-trained doctors. How do you see this playing out?
I have a cousin who's a neurosurgeon who recently relocated. And if you ask him properly, when we had a conversation before he left, he doesn't really want to leave.
Okay.
He never really wanted to leave. But he had to leave because there's a deplorable working state of doctors in the country. They are old for a month. I met a doctor because some weeks ago, I went to write IELTS and he was also writing. Then we got talking, and he told me that he's working for a national hospital for 6 months. He has never been paid for the past 6 months. So it is really, really appalling what's happening in that sector. It is annoying that the senators are not trying to address the issues. They're just trying to choke the doctors instead. The problem is not that they really don't want to leave. Being a doctor in Nigeria is such a thing of a pride. But that pride has actually gone down the hill for the past how many years now. And it is not the issue. You cannot deal with an effect without handling the cause. So why are they leaving? They're leaving because hospitals they don't have enough equipment to work. Hospitals are not in good shape. They're not being paid well enough to actually level up to actually compete effectively in the current market. That needs to change. You can't force them to stay. You're not fixing the issue. It's unfortunate that the UK has actually, well, Nigeria has always been on the UK red list anyway. It's not like it's a new thing. So let's not let them not act like it's something that happened yesterday. It happened a long time ago. But I'm really hoping that this can be reviewed, revised, and they can think clearly about what they're doing. I saw a tweet from the senator, the chairman of the health, I've forgotten his name, yesterday, a long tweet he made where he was actually saying that we want Nigerian doctors to stay, then we have to do well enough for them to stay. So we cannot say that we want to force them by bill or a policy for them to remain in the country. And I like something that says in the news report that says, if you make this a law, that Nigerian students doctors must spend at least 5 years after education, then people should not go for medical tourism anymore.
Exactly.
Stay back in the country and receive your treatment here.
Exactly.
So could that be like the African country recently? I think it was Zimbabwe who made it prohibited that no doctor should leave the country because they have less than 35,000 doctors to about 50 million people in the country.
It's really unfortunate because the problem is not, we have to deal with the cause and not focus on the effect. Yeah, we understand that Nigeria actually trained them, and honestly, yes, I've always said this before, for the quality of education we receive, what we are paying is very cheap, extremely cheap, because we pay, the highest you pay to go to a school in Nigeria is about $200 in a year. In a public university, of course, it's about $200 in a year. And you compete with doctors at international level who pay $20,000 to actually go to school per semester. So, but then again, are you making the workforce conducive for that?
Exactly.
Well, I need to correct something. It's 3,500, not 35,000, to about 50 million people.
All right. Well, that is quite appalling, and we hope we don't get to that state right here in Nigeria. Once again, Mukhtar Suleiman, thank you very much for coming on the show, and of course, we appreciate those insightful analysis coming from you. And of course, you said there's this thing, the corruption that you said. There's something you said about corruption.
Senseless corruption.
Senseless corruption. And sensible corruption. Exactly. I think I'll borrow that. So thank you very much for coming on the show. All right. So this is where we draw the curtains on the newspaper review right here on Daybreak. Stay with us when we return at the top of the hour. The show continues. Stay with us.
That's great. That's good to see.
All right, thank you very much for joining us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. And now it's time for us to go over the headline again. And we'll take the first one that says, police arrest another Kujejo escapee in Nasarawa.
And Easter, our families are hungry due to low passenger turnout, says commercial drivers.
And it's a beautiful morning here indeed for us. And let's take the last one, which says, Kuka says, may God guide Buhari in retirement as we reclaim our country.
All right, now let's go into the details. The Nasarawa State Command of the Nigeria Police Force says it has arrested 24-year-old Salisu Buhari, who escaped from Kuje prison during a jailbreak last year, and 27-year-old Zubairu Ali for alleged theft of a motorcycle in Nasarawa local government area of the state. In a statement signed by the command's public relations officer, DSP Ramnahan Nansel in Lafia, the state capital, and obtained by Daily Trust on Sunday, the duo have been terrorizing and causing sleepless nights for the residents of the council and its environs. He said the two suspects were arrested by the police operatives attached to Nasarawa Division in a sting operation.
And many commercial drivers in the Federal Capital Territory have decried the law of patronage by passengers for the Easter holidays. The drivers said on Sunday in Abuja that this has resulted in little or no income to take care of their families' needs. According to report, very few passengers were seen at the Jabi and Utako motor parks waiting to board vehicles on midday on Sunday. Mr. Yakub Jeremiah, a driver, said he had expected an influx of passengers due to the Easter holidays, but was disappointed by the number of people at the park.
Meanwhile, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka, has prayed to God to guide President Muhammadu Buhari in retirement. Buhari will end his second tenure on May 29, 2023. In his 2023 Easter message, Kuka told the president-elect Bola Tinubu that the most urgent task facing Nigeria is not infrastructure or the usual cheap talk about the dividends of democracy. His message was also passed to the Supreme Court of Nigeria, which Nigerians are watching with keen interest to decide issues arising from the 2023 general elections.
Now let's get over the packages again. Let's get to see what's happening. So as the May date of the 2023 National Population Census inches closer, the National Population Commission is taking off important parameters that would ensure smooth conduct of the exercise. Building numbers and the household listing will commence by April 17 before the actual census exercise kickstarts in May. Also on the calendar is a 4-day refresher training for the special workforce that would oversee the exercise, which was held in Makurdi, the Benue State capital. Our correspondent Jimmy Azande visited the training center and now reports.
After this training, the beneficiaries are supposed to transfer their knowledge to enumerators between April 25th to 30th, 2023. This is probably why the State Director of the National Census Commission, who spoke on phone, described the process as a train-the-trainer activity. Some of the trainees expressed optimism that they will be able to deliver optimally with what they have learned.
Training out of staff for the 2023 digital census. And the trainees here are the specialized workers. So actually they were trained, but there are some new things that came up, and we are trying to do a refresher training for them so that they get up with the new things that came up. So that is what is happening here. After this training, we are going to move to the local government where we'll be training the enumerators and supervisors.
The trainees also spoke on the process of the census and are commending the Commission for the opportunity to serve. They are also confident of the ability to step down the training to local enumerators in the designated places of primary assignment.
We are here to be trained and in the end go out there to give people the whole training that they need, and in the end for us to have a credible census, 2023 census. And I really appreciate it, and it's very good because the last training that we had was quite different. The futures were quite different from this very one. The refresher training has now boosted our knowledge about more things, more editions of the new, more things about the new editions. Quite ready to go out and train these other people to go to the field and give us a credible census.
For the past 4 days, we have been training rigorously. We have been trained on the mobile device and management as well, which was not taught previously. So yesterday we went for our field work on training mode, and today also we have gone for the enumeration of persons, the training. So far, I can say that we are 99% ready for the May census.
The last population census conducted in Nigeria was in 2006. 17 years after, Nigeria prepares for the very important activity, and reality is beginning to set in that the exercise will be conducted as scheduled.
Now to Gombe State, where motorbike operators in the state have reacted to the federal government's plan to remove fuel subsidy by June 2023. Now, a cross-section of the motorbike operators in Gombe Metropolis, who spoke to Ibrahim Ismail, said the policy would escalate the current fuel crisis in the country. His report.
Despite it being the twilight of the Buhari administration, it is still pressing to implement policies that will impact on the incoming administration. There are already plans to distribute palliatives to poor and vulnerable Nigerians, and the federal government has secured $800 million grant from the World Bank to finance its implementation under the National Social Investment Program. But the motorbike operators in Gombe Metropolis, also known as Okada riders, are uncomfortable with the proposed policy. They believe the move will have a negative effect on their businesses and want government to reverse the policy in the interest of Nigerians. The subsidy removal will affect me negatively. Considering the inflation rates in the country, I reject it. A commuter who is supposed to pay 100 naira will pay 50 naira instead. If you buy fuel worth 1,000 naira, you can only make 1,300 or 1,500 naira from it. You can feed your family and give balance for the motorcycle from the amount. They are planning to remove subsidy. Removing the fuel subsidy is plunging us to further hardship. It will take us backward. We are already in a difficult condition. The Okada riders are complaining about current hike in fuel prices, which they say makes it difficult for them to operate. The implication would be that total removal of subsidy would be detrimental to their survival. Removing fuel subsidy will worsen the situation. We are pleading with the government to halt the plan because we are benefiting from the subsidized oil price. The present administration may have federal government secured a grant from the World Bank to fund its distribution of palliatives to cushion the negative effect of subsidy removal. But will the incoming administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu be willing to be bound by conditions of a grant that it did not take? More importantly, which government will distribute the palliatives and which administration will remove the fuel subsidy? Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
Where residents have heaved sighs of relief over the circulation of cash in the metropolis. For months, the resident has experienced difficulty accessing cash as a result of Naira redesign policy, but it seems the situation has turned around. In this report, Beatrice Kurtzi spoke to residents of the state and to ask about the present state of cash resurfacing and access to cash generally.
The introduction of the CBN's cashless policy in the last few months made it difficult for many residents in Maiduguri to access cash from banks and from point-of-service operators. The directive of the Apex Bank that old notes be reintroduced into circulation is cushioning effects of the hardship. For some residents, the situation has improved compared to previous weeks as they now have access to cash, even though they experience long queues at the banks and network problems when making transactions.
We have been experiencing cash challenges sometimes back, but compared to now, I think there is little improvement. Improvement in the sense that there are cash in circulation, but the major challenges we are facing is the transaction charges from the maybe bank and other stuff like that.
Well, entering the bank alone has been a big challenge because sometimes you have work to do, you have other schedules, and then seeing the queue in the lines that is leading to the entrance of the bank is something you will spend the whole day.
Getting cash, people get cash, but as a student, you still have to go to the queue, go to the bank, be on the queue for so long, while I still have to attend my classes, my lectures, my practicals, so I still do not have that access to cash. My access to cash is still limited to just my transportation from school to my house.
However, some are adjusting to the new reality that the return of cash into circulation will not stop online transactions and use of ATM to pay for services.
Because most of the people has already been on that POS cashless. Even just transfer myself. Most of the people they believe now in transfer more than cash. But even before there are people that they believe on this banking transaction instead of cash. So when this cashless come again, so people are going on it. So for my own business, that POS is more than the cash right now.
Pona Iswa, who runs a point-of-service business, says he gets cash but not easily compared to the period before the cashless policy took effect.
That we are getting the cash, but anytime that CBN release money to the bank, we used to get the cash because I am agent of First Bank and they are helping us sometimes 500,000, sometimes 300, sometimes 400 based on the money that come into the bank. But after they come and release the old notes, now the old notes is available more than the new notes. But why is it that the new notes, as they bring it, why is it that now they circulate? Only the old note that is circulating.
For many residents in Maiduguri, the acceptance of old Naira notes and circulation of cash will make life bearable. This is why they hope that the federal government does not revisit the monetary policy again and reintroduce the hardships they experienced. Bitrus Kuruti, Trust TV News, Maiduguri.
Now, Tashe is a performance play by children, youth, and in some Hausa communities, even by the elderly, to entertain people at night during the month of Ramadan. Now, Tashe performers use drums and other traditional musical instruments, while others dramatize their messages to conform with the values of communities they represent. Abdullah Hamadi witnessed youngsters performing Tashe in Katsina and in Maradi in neighboring Niger Republic. His report.
From these young boys to these young girls dressed in attire that depicts Hausa culture and traditions, the message is the same, meaning Ramadan fast is at its peak and the momentum inches towards Salah festivities.
Malama ga kudin toshinki ban kada lefe na ku zuba mini bani barin sallah ta wuce ni. Malama me kike ta faɗi ne? So nake nayi tarin sallah dan bana kun ga ko ba a wuce ni.
The origin of this long cultural heritage could be traced to the beginning of the existence of Hausa people. Some of these performers depict the origins, values of Hausa culture, mixed with fictions on one hand and modernity on the other, mostly done between the first 10 days to the 20th of Ramadan. Its attachment with the month of Ramadan tries to give Tashi a more religious correlation than culture in most Hausa communities. However, some historians from the Niger Republic look at Tashi from a cultural perspective other than the religious point of view, even as it is done only during the month of Ramadan. While in some communities, Tashi performers are given some grains, meals, and even drinks, in some towns and cities, they are given some token amount of money as gifts.
So I suggest that people of the custodians of Hausa traditional culture shouldn't allow the culture of Tashe to die, because Tashe is a part and parcel of Hausa culture, and the culture is an identity of a people. As such, the culture of Tashe, which all observers will tell you that is on the verge of extinction as a result of intrusion of certain foreign cultures. This culture must not be allowed to die.
Observers say Tashi performers depicts the spirit of Ramadan, which encourages sharing, sober reflection, perseverance, humility, and togetherness. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Kazana.
All right, that's it for the news, so the headlines and, of course, reports on the hour. We'll take a short break right now, and when we return, we will take a look at our first topic of discussion for the day. Do stay with us.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back to the show. Hope you've been having a great time on Daybreak this morning. And now let's get into the discussion proper. And now, last-minute contract awards and other actions being taken by incumbent governors who are expected to vacate office on the 29th of May are creating concerns in affected states. While returning governors and freshly elected ones promised better deals to citizens when they recently received their certificates of return, there are fears that incoming chief executives would inherit huge contractual liabilities from their predecessors. Now to discuss this, we're being joined by public affairs analyst Sadiq Abubakar. Good morning to you.
Good to have me.
It's good to have you join us in the studio this morning.
Thank you very much.
Now, taking a look at all of this, I know that some governors are raising eyebrows already about some of these appointments, a last-minute contract being awarded. What do you think is going to be the impact of this in some of the states that are affected?
On a very sincere note, you see, as you know, government is a transient thing, and the proceedings of what is coming from the affected state precisely, if I may be very precise with the ones that were pronounced, is that of Benue, Sokoto, and a bit of concerns raised by Kano, and that of Abia. I think these are the ones that are more pronounced. Starting from the contractual issues tend to be the ones that are a bit salient but are more pronounced because it has to do with variations of the existing contracts. That is in the case of Sokoto precisely, where a 7 billion naira it tend to be incurred more on a contract 4.2 precisely from the ongoing teaching university, teaching hospital, and a 1 million precisely from the premier hospital in Tambuwal, then one also in one of the local governments. That's for the contractual. He didn't do an appointment. What this stands to me, in justifications to the claim by the Sokoto state governor, he tend to say that the reason why these variations became necessary is because of the hype of equipment in the market, even if it is not too satisfactorily to the people that have raised the eyebrow. But the ones that tend to be more alarming is that of Benue, where you have an appointment of 2,000 teachers, and you tend to ask of all times that even one of the problems highlighted before now, it's even not been able to pay salaries, and now you're appointing 2,000 teachers. That seems to be a bit on an unfair nature to like analyze, okay, as much as you say the justification is you are appointing people from the states, but what did you do to the salaries? And you know, when you come with the liability that tend to be in the service, you need to be in the system for another number of years, and there will be growth. So are you being real or fair to the incoming government? That is another question to answer, relating to what perspective are you coming from. And also, he has secured for the first time in a long time also the NACA, the Nigerian Civil Aviation, to construct an airport 12 kilometers away from the Makurdi town. That also, they keep justifying the fact that you have to wait until you don't even have a say now until it's on 29. They're still in charge of the states until 29, or better say on 28th of May, when their time elapsed in office, and your time starts as the 29th of May. But the questions are, when you come to Plateau, it's also funny because on last Tuesday he appointed 5 states High Court judges, and also the chairman of the Customary Court of Appeal. And they said that from his foundation, the incoming governor is asking him, why didn't he do that, knowing that being a lawyer, So he believed by his orientation he should have also earlier on made this appointment. When you highlight all of these things and you come to also in the Abia, where he tend to have appoint board of directors, and also that of Benue, including promoting those guys, rocking some appointments to even permanent secretaries. That all of these things, what they generate is whether it's done in the good of the people, or you're trying to put the burden of the people who think that, okay, they have come with their manifestos and they want to do.
Well, should there be a law actually guarding against this? I mean, you are on your way out. This person is coming in. Why should you burden that incoming administration with things that they actually have no say over? Should there be a law to guide against that?
That's talking about a law, it's a lot of proceedings. But like I said, normally government of whichever kind, even if it's at a tier government, which is a local government, is transient. By implications, if there are no harms to whatever decisions you make, which are much more likely, like I said, when you check the indices of the liabilities in most states, borrowing and all of that it gives, it's normally alarming when you're transiting. But when you make it look obvious and everybody get to know, are you really intending well for the state you've served for almost 8 years, and now you're going out just because you think your anointed candidate, if I should use it, did not get, which is to say, okay, let me do my last bits of the contractual whatever that we're going to do, because normally we know variations and review of projects are actually by most of the government. Let's be fair, if there's a time in a contract, normally in the engineering it's called RETS, it's a review of contract sum. So normally most of the projects, once it gets to some years, because of how the Nigerian building market is, it's transient and it also fluctuates most on the high or skyrocketing part. So most of the projects actually are due to some of them will even be reviewed to the presidential, because if it gets to some amount, it's not even within the states. The state governors have to come to the... So not all are actually problematic, but where it is obvious is when you start appointing. Not forgetting, like in the Kano state, the incoming or the newly elected governor has been given his adversary. I think even the transition committee went ahead to even start questioning to his first adversary is to stop all construction or anything going on in public place of worship, hospitals, and also that I might not think it's okay by the move, because it tends to be like, okay, stop what you're going through now in the construction. What if they had paid? They need to complete the work.
Yes.
And going again, I think even in responding to the chairman, the Algon telling them not to even do anything to siphon public funds for funding all of the rerun elections in some states, according to they allegedly said that money are being asked by the local government chairman to provide in order to fund elections. And the Bappa, who is the chairman of the Algon in Kano State, came out to say, wait until you are in office, then you can decide all of these things. All of these issues are of worries, because we knew the system that runs a government continuity in this country, and that is why it's of concern that if you check out all of this, you might think, okay, they are trying to still have a little bit achievement of what they have done so far in office or what they need to do. But whether it's well intended or it's well conceived by the persons in questions, the incoming government, that is where
the timing is what raises the question. I mean, that what raises the question of the motive. I mean, why now?
Yes.
Obviously, that is what I said. I said, why now? Because most of this project, including the appointments, most especially that of the appointment, putting on who are the commissioners at this time, permanent secretaries,
and giving
appointments of boards and all of this. I think it's a way of putting yourself and always raise a question of concern, because when you're now elevating people to permanent secretaries positions, it could be also being perceived as a way of planting people in the system or managerial system to frustrate an incoming administration.
Now, talking about frustrating an incoming administration, now we've seen the resultant effect. This is not the first time this is happening. At the end of a political era, you see all of this happening. It happened in Imo State, where people were given appointments, and then we have interim government coming in and everybody has to lose their job. This is one of the effects. It happened in, I think, in Ekiti as well. So don't you think that this is putting the governors-elect and the people at loggerheads when this eventually happens?
Like I made it clear, you see, in the 3 tiers of government that we have in Nigeria, you have the federal, the state, second tier, the local government. Not even area council elections. Most of the area council come, or local government comes, and before you go out, you give a last phase appointment when you come. It's either whether the chairman now suspend or dismiss people that have been appointed at the last lap. And also people start crying, why would you start on this wrong footings? Because you just came. But not being fair to whoever is inheriting of such administrative, and also who are coming at the transition committees, because their recommendation is going to check on what are the liabilities, were they incurred, were they things that were systematically incurred, or they were things that were deliberately forced at the dying minute, because they are picking from the ditch pots at the last minute, which are mostly what transition committees have been involved in too, one at the local government, one at the state government. So I should know how it comes, whoever the composition of a transition committee now comes, is where they check and see what is the history of how the monies are accumulated. Before becoming a governor or vying for governor, you should have known what is the liability tendencies of a state and what are you coming with the system. Also, you that you're going, don't forget that the only thing that gives you the immunity is because you're a governor. And you're losing that part if you're not being sincere with the positions or transitions of how you want to get out of government. You also be called to answer questions. And for you that is taking also, you might desist being honorably and said, okay, no, we know that this is a proceedings. I'm a civil servant. I know you want to skyrocket me to a position, but I prefer to be here because I don't want to be subject to an abuser tomorrow that somebody just come and said, no, this is not it. But if you check at it generally, like we said, if those things are really projects that have a direct bearing to the people, and their projects that are well intended. Like I said of Sokoto, he didn't do appointments, but the variations, people keep asking, why are you checking the variation at the dying minute as well? Because, okay, the teaching hospital is a project that everybody knows and it's well intended. The premier hospital is actually the one that's sent to immortalize that Ahmad Bello, which is a premier hospital, and it's in local government by local government. You also understand that. But pushing them at the dying minutes is just why it's an issue.
All right, now, so talking about things that can be done and things that can't be done. For example, now, most of the situations happen when these last-minute decisions are taken by the outgoing administration. Once the incoming administration comes, it actually reverses some of these things. And just like you said, it puts the person at loggerheads with the people. Now, so let's take the issue of Kano State, for example. The governor-elect issued an advisory for lenders that they should not lend the state government money unless it has his say-so or his contribution is sorted out. And he says he's not going to honor any loan given within this period without his contribution. Can he do that?
No, the power doesn't give him the right. That's why it's called an adversary anyway, because it was supposed to be whether it's honored or dishonored. But when you make it look like you are exercising the power, I can borrow from the words of the Professor Fagi, who is a renowned analyst and a political analyst, says it is morally and when you said morally, definitely, you know, it's actually from moral decency and whatever that you do in a such manner. He has no right to question to an extent, but he can also make it clear, like his dealers did, he won't honor, which is to say, if anything is done at this time, the one that is important is telling them that he might not honor.
Yeah, but the question is now, can he do that after he becomes governor? Will he say, okay, I'm going to honor this loan, but this one I'm not going to honor it because it was not done at the right time?
No, whether he does that, like I said, the duration will only give him the feedback to know that I want to act based on this.
Okay.
But for whether he can do it now, he can stop. Whether he said he's doing or he doesn't, there are people that are still going to lend the money. But when he is in office, at that time when he has all the powers that is enshrined to him as a governor, he can say, I made it this clear because I felt like they could be this and this and this, and it is now like this. But what if the proceedings are also normal?
Exactly.
And what the money that was lended was used for? If this were cleared at that time, he might have a very clear case than what it is at the moment, because from an outsider he will always feel like whatever that is going to be done at the moment, since he became the governor elect, might not be as good as he wants it to be.
So do you advise that, you know, when all of this transition period comes to play, we should have, you know, governors elect and the incumbent governor, you know, working together as if they are governors and deputy governors at that point? Would that be advised?
Yeah, because in Nigeria, I think one of the best things that President Muhammad Buhari did that everybody wouldn't take it away from him was completing all of the legacy project that the last administration had. We noticed, and people don't want to always comment on it, but I always used to say, I knew of continuation from a party to party that was discarded. And if one had come to continue, governors should be seen as a continuous thing, just as it is. Like you said, whether you're incumbent, whether you are incoming, all the people that are more important is who you are governing, which are the people of the state. Because if I still borrow from Professor Fage, he still went ahead to say, whatever that you're doing is not even doing it to the people that are elected, but the people, the people that the governance is all about, which are the citizens. So if you are doing anything to hurt an incoming governor, which people of the states, the citizens, have elect, whom are you hurting? The citizens. So continuation should be a way that, okay, I can finish from you as a governor, so if I come in, I will still render you an elderly advice, and I will also be a reference point to you. Let me not create that hitch that, okay, when you come, you see me as someone who tried to truncate processes, even not clearly, but who tried to stop me by doing what I should start to hit the ground running, trying to settle the liabilities that they are.
All right, could this be a direct consequence of how our campaigns are actually run? Because some of these campaigns, when you look at them, they're very vile. Lots of mudslinging, lots of name calling, and all that. Do you think that's what makes it difficult after the elections for these two parties to come and sit down and say, okay, fine, let's work together? Because there's a lot of animosity between the two sides.
Surely, sir, you know, Nigerian politics, unfortunately, it's like, it's not even now. It started from Berlin Conference when you have the nationalists trying to move for the Nigerian independence, and yet there's still this bitterness and trying to unite themselves within themselves. Because the campaigns in Nigeria have never been as peaceful as dialoguing, okay, we have what we want to do for this country, so let's collectively do this thing. No. Everybody had to stay as an antagonist to another person without, like you said, our campaign get heated up to a level that lives are lost sometimes, even if not reported. But sometimes we know how it is. The what's it called? The thuggery, the vandalization.
And just talk about
the
general violence.
Yeah, violence of first order, where even you win elections to congratulate your counterpart becomes an issue because a lot of expectation from each party. But whenever you come to sign a peace accord, what is expected and what is agreed upon is we're doing all this for a state interest. So if the state interest is our number one priority, then why do we have a problem? let's support this state to grow collectively, as against I must come and I must win and my person must win. I wanted to have a sustained system. Even when I'm out of the system, let it be in a way that I still have a relevance in the government which I am responsible for. And also there are you can see there are a lot of examples in states that went a different. I think Nigerian democracy is growing. Checking what happened in Zamfara and some other states, even the Benue we're calling in question, it's a lot of things have shown that things are not right, because if the governor can lose out his anointed candidate and also himself losing seat, about 14, you can count how many governors that did not make the Senate, which is to tell you that you have a true test of what you're doing, that people are assessing whether you have truly served or whether you were actually serving yourself. So if all of this were checked, then government should be in a way that they can relate, they can do a lot of things in progressive manner, rather than just this last hitches or last contract awards and appointments. I think going forward, like you said, if a National Assembly is going to look for it and see it as a matter of call, because it will still interest you to know that 60% of the Senate and more of advanced people that were former governors.
Ex-governors, exactly.
Yeah, so it's a place where if they sit down and make the law, ordinarily it should go, but because they knew they're protecting where they're coming from, it would be hard for them. But maybe if if the House of Reps tend to be, which is more younger, but thinking they're trying to also fit in the queue one day. So everybody tend to make a law that goes in a way either stopping his future attempt or trying to do what he's protecting that he has already left. That is becomes of a Nigerian situation. But let's see if things will go differently, because it all boils down to trickle-down effect of the governance from the top to the bottom. If that is done and that is achieved, maybe we would start thinking governors wouldn't be acting like they're demigods, because that is why the implementation of even the most powerful thing the Nigerian democracy would have witnessed is autonomy of the local government, which is the government that is close to the grassroots. If it is actually being empowered, we wouldn't be talking about what the governor does at that minute, because the local government would have also been as empowered as the state structure, because that is the voice of the people. But yet, you can see how it has always been thrown to the danger when the attempts are made in the National Assembly. Even when it tend to pass in bills, the House of Assembly tend to reject it, because they feel like when you let them have powers, you will not have a say per se, because the local government chairman, the transition committees, and all of those are the things that you do to control a state, which if you don't have a joint accountant, they're scared of what they are going to get or not, then it becomes an issue. So all of these things are going to be checkmate. How do we do going forward? Let's try to implement every unit of the governance, which the tier government, if it has a stance, and local government feel like he's a chairman for the people, not chairman for the governor, then it becomes an issue of progressive-minded. When you have this kind of situations, teachers' allocations appointment, on a very sincere note, is not even the duty of a governor. Yeah, it is something that is actually supposed to be related to the local education authority.
This actually started when, of course, there are accusations and local accusations that this is done to spite some political parties, or this is done to spite the governor-elect and all of that. At least, I think that is the honors of this concerns right now, which a lot of people are raising. But like you said, the way forward. And now talking about the law Ibrahim talked about earlier, I think this is the time we start putting these laws in place and going for the proceedings, going for first and second reading, and see how it's been assented at the end of the day, before the next election, actually.
Yeah, it will be a good thing, but like I said, and he had concurred with me, the custodians of the House of Representatives and also Senate are the same people who were responsible for the problems. So
interest here.
Yeah, so interest is actually might likely, like I said, an attempt would have been, okay, every local government, the 770, for substantial and standing on their feet. by that time you will know that every governor will know that he has a problem. Have you asked yourself why some governors don't even conduct local government elections?
Exactly.
No, because they want to have everything to themselves.
Now, with that kind of mindset, now since you've opened the door to this, let's explore it a little bit. With that kind of mindset now that these governors actually have, and with the kind of power over resources that having the local governments under them gives them, will we ever see local government autonomy? In as long as it is in the hands of these governors?
Let's be honest, you know, it's good to be hopeful. Seeing it and seeing it, I keep hoping for the better, because the only thing why you think government is something that will come to solve situations that have not been solved is because of the hopefulness. When you're not hopeful, you just believe that, okay, nothing good is going to come. I will start example by the area councils in FCT. They are not different, even if they are denied the second-tier government. So the only way of persuasion to them is to have an autonomy or a local government, because the only thing that you take in relevant shape is whether they have a governor or not, or House of Assembly or not, but yet the local government receive good payments of locations. But in the case of state, because of the mindset of the governors, it's not more of the money that they even want to attract. What they want is the control of the local governments. So if they know that their money is in a joint account and they sit down for Jack to meet and regulate on how to give who, if you're not in the good book of the governor, you're likely to even get what? Better allocations, which is going to affect your local government. So the mindset of the governors and the governors, who makes the law, who legislates? Are the legislators ready to bring, maybe believing that now that we're having a former legislator as a president-elect, maybe, and maybe we might tend to see things differently, and the deputy, the vice too, who was also a senator. Let's see if they can exploit from their book of experience and see both of them were governors, both of them were senators, and see if they might change to challenge the system which they know how it operates and runs, and see where the common man voice will be the interest of governance rather than interest of a few.
But some might say they were actually there, they benefited from these things and they didn't make a move.
Yeah, well, we said they do or they don't. Now they are actually taking the seat of the federations and a system where a government where system is hardly finding itself back rooted. Because I said, when they said system, I said, yes, you have a public service system that someone would be in the system for 30 years and you ask him what was his personal contribution to the growth of the nation. He hardly could tell you, but he knows that the states of the nations have been paying him salary for the 30 years, being whether from the degree to the directorate to whatever level that they have operated. What matters much is having a system that works. And what makes it work? Having a target and allowing people believe that what we're after, it's not just us, it's the people that we're governing.
It's putting the people first, actually. All right, so when you have transition periods like this, we're seeing a rash of transition committees being set up in every state. What exactly is the function of these transition committees if they cannot be able to smooth over these things that we're talking about, whereby they can't form as a platform for these two sides to actually come together to make a decision and make things go smoothly? What is actually the function of them?
The function of transition committee, like I said, is actually to checkmate what you're coming to inherit. What's the system? In every of the ministries, what has been done, what is yet to be done, what is left outstanding, what are the projects ongoing, which ones are completed, what are the rest of, how much is it, what is the worth of the contraction. It's not just a bridging between two. No, it's more like a checkmating of what do you have to work on. As much as, yes, you contested for governor or you contested for whatever positions, you needed to know what is it, because only as a transition committee you can be given access, and as such even sometimes they are denial of access to some sensible materials or sensible information that you need to know. Some are actually taken off. Some will come when you are in the system. Then you realize that even when the transition committee, not everything that was given to the transition committee, but transition committee is supposed to be compositions of legal, financial expertise and all that will come and checkmate what has been done, engineers, town planners, to know what are the standards, how are it, whatever you bring up to this level, then they will take to know, okay, from now, this is what you have, these are the documents you have. By the time they are doing handing over, you are presenting him to this, then he open a book, you come, this ministry, this is what I have received about you. Can I be briefed properly? Where's the contractors? Let know what is there. These are what the transition is, just to provide you a transient move into a smooth path. It's not actually to cement the relationship, but most of the times when you're doing this, the moment transition committee has said, the incumbent always feel being checkmate or being tussled to an extent because you just feeling like I've seen in 2 occasions where I have served where an admin, head of admin of the farm sec admin deny you some information deliberately that wait until you are in the office, then you see what it is. Okay. Ordinarily, as a transition committee member, you're not even supposed to deny an access because someone who, your principal who has set you as a member also wants you to get that information and he is supposed to be allowed. But it's just like the same adversary that we said, you have limit at which you can even force a system that you're not totally in charge of.
But we know that, you know, getting information for this is to work and set things in place before the governor-elect or whoever is taking charge comes in. But we have this problem of getting information from, let's say, in court, government agencies now. What can we do to actually make that go away? Because that seems to be a very big problem.
You know, when I keep saying system, people will want to wonder, why do I keep saying system? Is it that we don't have system? Yeah, partly we don't have system because it will interest you to know some of the transition committee that have formed before now. You will ask a contract of $1 billion, 2-3 billion, yet there are no proper documentations to what those contracts are. But when you have a system, obviously it should even be digitalized. It's something that should be accessible, that if a government allocations is made open, why can't contracts be made public? Because by the time you put it in a system, obviously if you Google, like if most of the projects you see outside Nigeria now, you Google Clark Construction, maybe the Boulevard, you see what is the cost of the project, people that were involved in it. But the case of systems, because of how manipulative the system is and what is gained from the system, they get scared to put it at the public consumptions. Yet when you go to the offices in charge of those contractual sums and all of them, there are also limitations to what is put there in the open registry and what is put there in the secret registry. Which one are you accessible to? Which do they want you? So you only get accessible to what they want you to get. What they don't want you to get, you actually find it hard to get. Sometimes they are what they call system deletes anyway. So they get to, you don't even know how it gets missing, but yet you just keep looking. Yeah, there was a contract. You keep seeing lots of temporary files in contractual sums, and this is to tell you that what happens to the main file that you're bringing a temporary file with the allocation letters and how the movement of transactions were made.
And they just have a way of putting designated people who can defend all of this without even blinking.
They call it smartness anyway.
All right, well, we look forward to May 29th, whereby we hope for a peaceful transition and handover to a new administration that can come and make things better. Sadiq Abubakar, thank you very much.
Thank you
for
very
coming
much
on the show, and of course we appreciate your insights and of the analysis and of course these perspectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this is how we are going to wrap it up on Trust TV's Daybreak this morning. We had a wonderful time being here and of course making sure that your day gets off to the best of starts. So why don't we do it all again tomorrow? I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And it's Easter Monday, you're relaxing, and of course the Ramadan is still very on and we're going about our normal business. Please to stay out of trouble. My name is Martia Umar. I'll see you again.